Hi, my name is Haley. Today I'm going to be discussing my article, which is The Social Calculus of Voting. It's from 2002 and it was written by Paul Allen Beck, Russell J. Dalton, Stephen Green, and Robert Huckfelt. It was published in the American Political Science Review. So, at its core, the article asks, how do interpersonal discussions, media exposure, and organizational membership interact to shape people's choices in presidential elections? And this directly coincides with the theory that I also explored this week, which was the uses and gratifications theory. When we are making these decisions, how intentional are they? How do they make us feel? And why exactly do we make them? What kind of needs are we seeking to satisfy through that? So, the article builds on classic ideas of mass communications like the uses and gratification theory and the two-step flow of communication, but it also expands them to a political context, which I would argue is super important, especially this day and age when it feels like there's a new political controversy happening every other day. So it's really important that we are keeping ourselves in check, understanding what we're being motivated by when we seek out information, and what we're being motivated by when we are having dialogues with people and sharing information. So here is a little bit about the social calculus. So Beck and his colleagues argue that voting decisions are not made in isolation. Instead of a personal calculus where an individual weighs their own needs and benefits and beliefs, they describe more of a social realm, which is where a social environment heavily influences choices, which is something we see every day. My opinions change when I talk to more and more people and gain more and more insight on what people believe, and that just happens when you become more knowledgeable. You shift and you alter your opinion on certain things. There's three major influences on these choices. It's going to be your interpersonal network, so family, friends, coworkers, people you talk to day in and day out and respect and want to know the opinion of. Two, we have media exposure, which is going to be news coverage and any kind of editorial content that we kind of see about political things happening. And then three is going to be the organizational influences. This would be the biggest one, I would say. Political parties, civic groups, religious organizations. Those things have huge implications on how people are voting, gathering information and sharing information, especially when you coincide political beliefs with moral beliefs, which is something that we do often now, or even political beliefs with religious beliefs, which is something that's also way more prevalent now. The key finding from this article is that interpersonal discussions have the strongest and most consistent influence on presidential vote choice, even more than direct media exposure. And that's exactly as I said. It's because you're surrounded by these people every single day. You value their opinion. Hopefully you're surrounding yourself with people you want to be like. So obviously you're going to feed off of that and vote in a way that they would, which most people do. This ties into more of like media as a social process. So media messages gain more meaning as they're discussed, interpreted, and reinforced within social networks. Now I'm going to get into a little bit about the purpose of the article and explain a little bit why the authors wrote this study. Beck et al. Wanted to revive the idea that social context matters in political behavior. Who you surround yourself with matters. We can take it back to the Charlie Kirk murder that happened in September, and everyone was preoccupied with where did the shooter come from, who did he surround himself with, and what were his political motivations. So finding that motivation behind someone to act that way or behave that way is at the forefront of everyone's mind. Earlier studies focused mostly on like the media's effect or individual attitudes, but this one shows that political opinions are shaped through interaction within communities. So it's something that's continually talked about. It's a continuous dialogue. They also, I would say, wanted to demonstrate that to understand voting, we have to understand how information travels. We have to understand not just who receives it, but how it travels, how people get it, and then how people perceive it as well from there. So next I'm going to get into a little bit about the application, everyday and modern context. So I just want to show kind of how the theory applies to today and then connects to media behavior, especially in social media, which is ever evolving and more prevalent than ever. Even though this article was written in 2002, I do think that the ideas are still applicable to today's media environment. When we think about social media, people aren't just consuming political content, they are directly engaging in it through shares, debates online, and they're going to reinforce that within their circles. I know if I've gotten into an argument on social media, which I have before, I'm going to go tell all my friends about it, and I'm going to look for validation in what I said. So that's something that people do a lot. I'll also say, like, during heightened political times, such as the previous example that I gave, people often turn to their peers or online communities for interpretation and validation, basically to tell them how to think, which sounds bad, but it's something that we do with everything. If people are if everybody is on a health kick and on a diet, you're going to want to be on a health kick and on a diet. If everybody's going to church on Sundays, you're going to want to go to church on Sundays. It's just all about belonging and that social identity gratification that is being fulfilled. So from the uses and gratifications perspective, going into that, people use the political media to fulfill needs, to feel informed, to express their ideology and their personal identity, and to connect socially with these parasocial relationships, actually, that are developed within the political landscape. The social calculus article explains how these uses become socially reinforced through discussion and community. So again, that connection with each other and interaction is going to reinforce whatever agenda and ideology that you want to push. Next, I'm going to get into the research application. So an idea that I had for research, for a project through this research, I'm just going to give the research question and then break it down from there. The research question is, how do young adults utilize social media to satisfy gratifications, informational, social, and identity-related needs during heightened political controversy and through debates over major political crises such as the Epstein files and the murder of Charlie Kirk? So what this project would explore is how young adults essentially cope through social media and through media engagement as a whole during politically charged seasons. And what these seasons do is they create an inundation of media of different opinions from people to outlets. Everyone is jumping online to share their opinion, and it's inundating people, and it's extremely overwhelming. I know I had to delete social media for a few days. I had to log off because I was getting so much anxiety because of it, which is also interesting to link kind of heightened political controversies and the inundation of media with declining mental health in young adults. So that's something that could be really cool too, but that's not for this. So it would explore how they cope with it, and then times like these do amplify the demand for information and spark controversial and damaging discourse. So none of it's really productive, and nobody really wants to seek out information to change their opinion or to alter their opinion. They just want to simply hear themselves speak, or in this case, watch themselves type. And that's just a sad fact of today. No one wants to listen. Everyone wants to talk. So it would also, the uses and gratifications theory would help us to understand why individuals gravitate to certain outlets and platforms and what needs they're looking to satisfy through that. Interviews, I think, would be the best methodology for this project. I would start with a preliminary survey to evaluate motivations during controversy, which platforms are most tuned into during these times, and how active participants are in seeking information, and then how they felt after said information. Did their opinion change? Did their opinion stay the same? Did they become more or less radicalized in their opinion? I would also evaluate their starting point. How much did they know beforehand? Were they a part of, in this hypothetical example, part of Turning Point USA? Did Charlie Kirk have a significant impact on their life? So just to know how they felt content in general aligned with their political ideology. From there, I would narrow it down, maybe pick most extreme and then a few not, and then have a focus group to take a deeper look into specific controversies and how these controversies kind of drive a shift in media choices or intensify gratifications to be met. I would ask people if they lost trust in a media source during this time and realigned with another that they believed were more in line with their political ideology. I would also ask how said controversies affected their own political identity. Again, did they become more or less radical because of this thing that happened in the political landscape? And then I'd ask if dialogue about these controversies affected relationships in their lives and how. I think that's a lot to do with the motivation and the needs and gratifications theory as well. If I am a Democrat and I am talking to my Republican friend and I am having a conversation with them on something that I know for a fact, I already have the knowledge that they are not going to agree with me, I'm looking to start a fight at that point. And at that point, there's no point in us being friends because I am being, not sociable, not agreeable, and I am not having a conducive dialogue. So that's something to weigh also. What was my intention with that? Did I just want to give it to them straight and tell them I'm done with them? Or did I want to try to change their mind? Things like that kind of prompt us to act the way that we do. From here, there are guidelines that the creators of the uses and gratifications theory came up with in order to conduct and evaluate the actual research. And those are, is the audience active? Did the audience member link their need gratifications to media content? Does the media compete with other sources of need satisfaction? Are they online saying all this stuff? Are they face-to-face? And in which case, if they're online all the time, that you're sacrificing those face-to-face social needs, which are really important for development and cognitive competency and emotional intelligence, obviously. Are people aware of their needs, and can they indicate them to me? Like, are they aware of what they know? This is some self-reporting, so we do risk some self-reporting bias here, but when it comes to communications and evaluating needs and motivations, that's kind of, I feel like, the only thing you can rely on, unless I'm wrong. And then number 5, judgment about the value of what people tend to gravitate towards should not be a part of the research at all. So mitigating any bias and checking it at the door before evaluating the results. Overall, I'm hoping that the results would allow me to see how young people really do communicate during political controversies while preserving credibility and integrity of the research, and then seeing how to engage with audiences who seek different gratifications. That's what this would do. To even further research in the future, it would show this demographic focuses on these needs, this demographic focuses on these needs. This is how the media, this is how journalists and media strategists can focus on these people by supporting these needs. So yeah, now I'm just going to do a quick recap. So just to summarize the key idea, the social calculus of voting article shows that political behavior is both individual and social. Our choices are shaped by the media we use, the groups we belong to, and the conversations that we have with one another. And then to tie back the theory, we combined with uses and gratifications theory to provide a lens to understand not just what people consume and why, and how their social networks transform that into a collective meaning or a group or a social identity. And then I think it's also important to say that democracy and being politically engaged in general does not depend on just information. It does depend on discussion. I spoke about this a little bit in my handout, but John Milton's Marketplace of Free Ideas is a wonderful framework to use for the fact that dialogue is important. Regardless of the truth that emerges, which is all subjective, dialogue is important. Speaking to each other is important. It's just being mindful of what needs are you trying to fulfill before a sentence leaves your mouth. That could save a relationship and help you to be more calm. But yes, thank you so much. Bye.